The Zarelian Empire was known across the galaxy for its ancient traditions, many of which were built on power, fear, and an overwhelming desire for dominance. Among the most famous of these customs was the ritual of the night, a challenge like no other. Each year, one ambassador from another species was chosen to spend an entire night within the court of Queen Saraxa, the most feared and revered ruler in the galaxy. No one had ever survived it. Some had fled, others had vanished without a trace, and a few had returned. Broken, mind and body shattered beyond recognition. There was no glory in surviving the night, only the horror of witnessing the unrelenting power of the queen. The Zarelians were telepaths, able to read minds with ease, and their queen was more powerful than any in her race. She wasn't merely a ruler. She was a living weapon, capable of bending the very fabric of reality around her. Her court was a place of beauty, but it was also a labyrinth of traps, psychological, physical, and even spiritual. To enter meant to risk everything: dignity, mind, and even life itself. But for all the fear the ritual inspired, it was also a mark of honor. Whoever could survive the Queen's trials would be recognized as worthy of a special place in the galactic order. And so, when Earth was invited to send a representative to a galactic council of races, many believed the humans would send someone who would hide behind diplomacy, seeking only to blend in. But humanity had a tendency to surprise, and their ambassador would be anything but ordinary. Commander Elias Vance wasn't known for playing by the rules. He was a decorated officer with the United Earth Fleet, one who had faced countless dangers from space pirates to hostile alien worlds. But despite his numerous accolades, it was his reputation for unorthodox methods and blunt honesty that had earned him the invitation. Vance didn't look like much a tall, scruffy man with an unshaven face and an easygoing manner that often masked his sharp intellect. But he was known for his bravery, his unpredictable strategies, and his ability to talk his way out of almost any situation. When the council leaders proposed the challenge to the human ambassador, Vance's name had been volunteered almost immediately. "I'll do it," he had said, shrugging as though the task were no more difficult than a morning briefing. His calm response was met with stunned silence. The other species had waited for the human to hesitate, to express doubt, or to at least show fear. But there was none. How bad could it be? He had added with a grin. Now Vance found himself aboard the sleek Zarelian shuttle, the gleaming cityscapes of the alien capital growing ever larger as they approached. The shuttle door opened, and he stepped out onto the alien soil, his boots crunching softly on the crystal-like surface. He had been briefed on the ritual on what to expect, or at least what the other ambassadors had expected. The Queen's court was a place of mind games, illusions, and tests designed to break one's spirit. But Vance was different. His mind was a fortress, his experiences vast. What could an alien queen possibly throw at him that he hadn't already faced? As he walked toward the palace, he couldn't help but feel a strange sensation, a prickling on the back of his neck. There was something almost alive about the air here, something that stirred a deep unease. The palace before him shimmered, like a mirage, its walls shifting in color and texture as though the very stone was conscious. It wasn't just an architectural marvel, it was a warning. This place was alive, and it was watching him. The door opened before him with a quiet hum, revealing a vast hall filled with glowing light and the silent presence of the Zarelian court. Queen Saraxa stood at the far end of the room, bathed in the soft glow of bioluminescent plants. She was as magnificent as she was terrifying. Her long silver hair cascaded around her face like liquid light, and her eyes, glowing faintly with an unnatural hue, locked onto Vance's, as if reading every thought that crossed his mind. She was tall, graceful, and radiated an aura of power that could crush the will of lesser beings. But as she gazed at him, there was a flicker of something more: curiosity, perhaps? Or was it amusement? Commander Elias Vance of Earth. Her voice echoed through the hall, low and resonant. "You've come to face the night. Few have dared. Fewer have survived." Vance's lips curled into a half-smile. "Surviving isn't really my style," he replied. "I prefer making things interesting." The Queen's gaze narrowed, but there was no anger in her eyes, only a cold, calculating curiosity. "Very well. Let the night begin. The air around him seemed to grow thicker, as if the very room was breathing. Vance's senses sharpened. He was aware of every movement, every whisper of sound. But the stillness, the eerie silence, was what truly unsettled him. It felt like something was watching him, but not in the way he was used to. This was different. This wasn't just an alien presence. It was something older, something more ancient than the stars themselves. He knew it wasn't just a matter of physical survival. The Queen had promised to test his mind, his spirit, and even his sense of self. Without warning, the room shifted. The ground beneath him trembled as the walls began to swirl with strange symbols and foreign words, an ancient language he couldn't understand. For a moment, everything went dark, and the only sound was the beating of his own heart. Then the darkness was replaced by vivid images of his past, his missions, his mistakes. 1,000 faces flashed before his eyes, the crew members he had lost, the innocent lives caught in the crossfire of war. They all stared at him, accusing him, blaming him. "You failed them," a voice whispered from the shadows. "You failed them all." Vance stood still, his breath steady. He had heard these voices before. The guilt, the doubt, it was all part of the game. The Queen was testing him. She wanted to see if he would crumble under the weight of his own conscience. "I didn't fail them," he muttered under his breath. "I did what I had to do." The shadows seemed to laugh, a cold, mocking sound that sent a chill down his spine. The room shifted again, this time revealing a vision of Earth itself burning, consumed by flames. The cities lay in ruins, the people scattered and broken. It was the future, a possible future, one that humanity had always feared. He could feel the heat on his skin, the choking smoke filling his lungs. "You think you can stop this?" The voice whispered again. "You can't. Your species is weak. It's only a matter of time before the galaxy burns you out." Vance clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. The images faded, and he was back in the Queen's hall, standing alone in the center of the room. The pressure of the trial was real now. This wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that humanity had the strength to endure. The Queen wasn't just testing him. She was testing Earth, testing humanity's resolve. And Vance wasn't about to let her down. The moment the illusions shattered and reality snapped back into place, Elias Vance found himself standing in a vast, darkened chamber. The air was thick with an unnatural stillness, as though the very atmosphere had become a part of the test, breathing with him, watching him. The walls of the room were not solid but ever-shifting, like the surface of a liquid crystal, reflecting countless images from distant stars, planets, and worlds that existed in places no one could reach. There was no door, no way out, just an endless expanse of the unknown. Queen Syrax's voice echoed through the chamber, its resonance vibrating in Vance's chest. "You've passed the first trial. But the night is long, Commander. And your trials are far from over." Vance didn't flinch. His eyes remained steady as the room seemed to grow colder, the air tingling with energy, as though the very space around him was charged with an invisible current. The floor beneath him pulsed, almost alive. He could feel the weight of the Queen's presence, though she hadn't moved. Somewhere, beyond the shifting walls, her eyes were on him watching, calculating. The trial had only just begun. The chamber darkened further, a soft light emerged from the center, and slowly something began to take shape. At first, it was a distant, hazy figure, a human-like silhouette, tall and graceful, surrounded by an ethereal glow. But as the figure drew nearer, Vance could see more clearly. It wasn't a human at all. It was a Zarelian. The creature stood before him, its black eyes like endless pools of darkness. It was taller than Vance, almost impossibly so, and its elongated limbs seemed to stretch and bend in ways that were far too fluid to be human. The skin shimmered in hues of violet and blue, and its body radiated an unsettling sense of alien beauty. But there was something disturbing about its presence, something that set Vance's nerves on edge. This was no ordinary Zarelian. It was a creation, a construct. Vance stood tall, forcing himself to remain calm. His military training kicked in. He wasn't going to be intimidated. The figure's eyes locked onto his, and suddenly the room seemed to warp. The shadows deepened, and Vance felt as if he were being drawn into a vast void, surrounded by a suffocating emptiness. "Do you know what it means to face yourself, Commander?" The Zarelian figure asked, its voice a strange mix of musical and mechanical, as if each word was designed to reverberate through his very soul. The question hung in the air, unanswered. "Can you face the darkness inside you?" Before Vance could respond, the chamber shifted again, and the figure lunged toward him with terrifying speed. But instead of reacting with panic, Vance shifted into a defensive stance, his mind working swiftly. The figure's movements were too fluid to anticipate, but Vance wasn't trying to outmatch it physically. He was thinking several steps ahead. The figure stopped just inches away, its face inches from his, eyes burning into him. For a moment, Vance's breath caught. The creature wasn't just testing his reflexes, it was testing his resolve. The Queen was watching, probing his very thoughts, searching for cracks, weaknesses, places where his mind could be bent. And that was when Vance realized something crucial. This trial wasn't physical. It wasn't about strength. It was about who he was, at his core, his integrity, his fears, his weaknesses. "I don't fear you," Vance said quietly, his voice steady, refusing to let the creature's presence unnerve him. "You're not me." A low chuckle echoed through the room. The figure tilted its head, studying him. Then, with a sudden burst of light, it vanished. The chamber was silent again, and for a brief moment, Vance felt the weight lift from his shoulders. But he knew the worst was yet to come. Interesting, the Queen's voice rang out, and Vance realized, too late, that she hadn't been as silent as he'd thought. Her presence was everywhere, in the very fabric of the room, in the shifting lights, in the pulsating energy of the chamber. "You understand this trial, I see, but the court has more for you to face." The floor beneath his feet gave a sudden, violent lurch. Vance barely had time to steady himself as the walls around him crumbled, revealing an abyss. The ground began to tremble, cracks splitting through the air as something far darker emerged from the shadows. He could hear it before he saw it, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to shake the very air, vibrating through his chest and into his bones. From the darkness rose an enormous, grotesque creature, a twisted mockery of something once alive. Its massive, insect-like body gleamed in the dim light, the wings buzzing with an unnatural hum, and its numerous eyes glowed with an eerie red light. The creature's mouth opened, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth, and it let out a roar that rattled the walls. For the first time in years, Vance felt a flicker of something he hadn't expected: fear. The creature was a nightmare made real, something born from the deepest corners of the Queen's mind, a manifestation of everything the Zarelians feared. It was designed to be overwhelming, to crush the spirit of any who dared to face it. But Vance wasn't going to break. He squared his shoulders, his hand instinctively reaching for the weapon at his side, but there was no weapon. There was nothing but his mind, his instincts, and his will. He didn't need a weapon. He needed to outthink it. The creature lunged at him with terrifying speed, its jaws snapping shut just inches from his face. Vance's eyes widened, but his body moved before his mind could catch up. He dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the creature's crushing strike, and rolled across the ground, coming to his feet in one fluid motion. The creature hissed, its wings flapping furiously as it prepared for another attack. But this time, Vance didn't wait for it to come to him. He charged forward, using the creature's momentum against it. With a quick, fluid motion, he leaped onto its back, his fingers finding purchase on the jagged spines protruding from its hide. He didn't have time to think he was running on pure adrenaline, fighting with a fury that came from a place deep within him. The creature's body shuddered beneath him, trying to buck him off, but Vance held on with every ounce of strength he had. "I am not your prey," he growled, gritting his teeth as the creature bucked and twisted beneath him. In that moment, everything fell away: the creature, the Queen, the very trial itself. There was only him, and the will to survive. And as the creature let out one final screech, it collapsed to the ground, defeated. The room went silent. For a long moment, there was nothing but the sound of Vance's ragged breathing. He stood over the creature's body, his chest heaving as he wiped the sweat from his brow. The darkness that had gripped the chamber was gone, replaced by the faintest glimmer of light. "Impressive," the Queen's voice finally echoed through the chamber. But the night is far from over, and in that moment, Vance knew the true meaning of the Queen's challenge. The trials weren't designed to break him, they were meant to make him stronger. And that was exactly what he intended to do. The world around Elias Vance shimmered with an eerie, otherworldly glow, the chamber now completely transformed. No longer was he standing in the dark, shifting room from before. Instead, he found himself in an immense, open space, an endless void stretching infinitely in all directions. The ground beneath his boots felt solid, but it rippled like water under his feet. Above him, a sky swirled with countless stars, galaxies, and nebulae, each one more beautiful and terrifying than the last. The stars weren't mere lights, they pulsed with life, each one alive with energy, and Vance could feel them drawing his attention, calling to him, whispering in a language beyond understanding. Vance didn't know how he'd gotten here, but there was no time to wonder. He didn't need to look around to understand that this was no longer a physical test. This was something else entirely, a test of will. "You've done well, Commander," came Queen Syrax's voice, soft and smooth, cutting through the silence of the void. "But what you have faced so far is nothing compared to what comes next. This is the dance of wills. Here, you will not fight with your body, nor will you rely on brute strength. You will face the deepest, most personal part of yourself. You will confront your mind, your emotions, and your spirit. This will not be an easy trial. It is the final test of your worth." Vance's heart quickened. He had known this would come. The physical tests had been difficult, but they were straightforward. This, however, was something different. In all his years of combat, diplomacy, and survival, he had never been tested like this, tested on the very core of what made him human. His mind was his greatest asset, his most dangerous weapon, and the one thing no alien could truly understand. But even so, he felt the subtle pressure in the air, the weight of expectation. The Queen wanted to see his soul bend, wanted to see him falter. As he stood there, the space around him began to shift again. The stars flickered, and the fabric of the universe seemed to ripple like the surface of a pond disturbed by a stone. Before him, a figure began to form a reflection of Vance himself, but not quite. This was a version of him that had never existed, one born from his deepest fears and insecurities. The figure was an exact copy of him, down to the smallest detail, yet there was something wrong. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, its skin paler, its expression cold and hollow. "Are you ready to face me, Commander?" the figure asked, its voice a twisted echo of his own. "Or are you too afraid of what you'll find?" Vance didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied the figure closely. It mirrored his every movement, every expression, but the eyes were different. They were filled with something he recognized, something he had spent years trying to bury, doubt. "I don't fear you," Vance said, his voice steady, though a part of him recoiled at the rawness of his own words. "You're not real." The figure tilted its head, a cruel smile tugging at the corners of its lips. "Oh, I'm real, Commander. I'm the part of you that you've never truly confronted. The guilt, the shame, the failures you try so hard to forget. I am everything you've ever tried to hide from yourself." Vance felt a chill run down his spine. The figure was right. It was more than a reflection, it was a manifestation of all the things he had buried deep inside him. The mistakes he had made, the friends he had lost, the people he had failed to save. It was the part of him that he couldn't escape, no matter how far he ran. The figure stepped forward, its gaze locking onto his. "You failed them, didn't you? Your crew, your people. You couldn't save them. You couldn't save your world." The words stung more than he expected. His throat tightened as a flood of painful memories surged to the surface. The night his ship had been ambushed, the faces of the crew members who had died because of his decisions, the innocent lives caught in the crossfire of war, his mind flashed with images of destruction, of moments where he had been too slow, too unsure. The doubts that had haunted him for years rose like ghosts, whispering in his ear, urging him to question everything. "I did the best I could," Vance whispered, though the words felt hollow. "It wasn't enough, but I did what I had to." The figure's laughter echoed around him. "Did you? Or did you fail them all? You think you did your best, but deep down, you know you could have done more. You always do. You could have saved them if you had made different choices. If you hadn't been so stubborn." Vance gritted his teeth, trying to hold his ground. The pressure was unbearable. He had faced enemies before, had fought against insurmountable odds, but this was different. This wasn't an enemy he could shoot or outsmart. This was an enemy that lived within him. An enemy that could never be defeated by force alone. "You don't understand," Vance said, his voice raw but steady. "I don't need to be perfect. I just need to keep moving forward. I made mistakes, but I'm still here. I'm still standing. And I'll never stop fighting." The figure's eyes narrowed, its smile widening into something grotesque. "You'll never stop fighting, will you? You'll just keep running, keep pushing yourself until you burn out. But don't you see, you've already lost. You've lost because you can't accept who you are. You can't accept that you will fail. And when you do, you'll be left alone. Always." Vance clenched his fists, anger boiling beneath the surface. The figure was right. He'd always run from the darkness inside him, always fought to bury the guilt, the doubt, the fear. But this time, he wasn't going to let it consume him. He wouldn't let the Queen or this twisted reflection of himself win. With a sudden, determined movement, Vance stepped forward. "No, I won't let you win." The figure reached out to grab him, but Vance was faster. He grabbed its wrist, twisting it sharply, and then shoved it back, knocking it to the ground. The figure writhed, but Vance stood over it, his chest rising and falling with the intensity of his breath. This time, he wasn't going to run. He wasn't going to hide from his past. He would face it, stare it down, and move forward. "You're not real," Vance said again, his voice steady now, no longer uncertain. "You're just my fears, my doubts, my mistakes. But I'm not afraid of you anymore." As if hearing those words broke something in the air, the figure screamed, its form flickering, shifting, and then, with a final anguished wail, it vanished, dissolving into the vast expanse of stars. Vance stood there for a long moment, his breathing deep and steady, the echoes of the trial still ringing in his mind. The dance of wills had tested him like nothing before, but he had passed. He had faced the worst parts of himself and emerged stronger. And then, out of the silence, Queen Syrax's voice rang out once more. "Impressive. Few have ever stood up to their own darkness and come out victorious. But this is only one step. There is more to come, Commander." Vance took a deep breath, his muscles aching, but his resolve unwavering. "I'm ready." The stars overhead flickered, casting strange, shimmering lights across the vast expanse of space. The void around Elias Vance was more than just a physical place. It felt like a living, breathing entity, an unfeeling observer to the trials of those who dared to enter the Queen's realm. He had passed the dance of wills, but there was no relief, no sense of finality. The tension was growing, heavier with every breath he took, and Vance knew deep down that the Queen's ultimate test had yet to come. He stood alone in the darkness, his mind still reeling from the trial he had just faced. The manifestation of his inner fears and regrets had been vanquished, but the feeling of isolation lingered, as though he was stranded between worlds, with no path forward and no way back. Then, without warning, the silence was shattered by the sudden appearance of a brilliant light. The very fabric of the void itself seemed to part, revealing a throne room that was unlike anything Vance had ever seen. It was both beautiful and terrifying, a colossal structure of alien architecture, made of a shimmering, translucent material that seemed to breathe with life. The air was thick with power, a tangible force that pressed in on Vance, weighing him down. At the far end of the chamber, on a throne of blackened crystal, sat Queen Syraxa. Her presence was overwhelming, her figure cloaked in ethereal light, her eyes gleaming with a predatory intelligence. The air around her shimmered as if it were alive, her dark beauty radiating an aura of supreme authority. Her wings, like those of an ancient, otherworldly creature, curled behind her, each delicate feather glowing faintly. She was no longer the distant figure who had watched from the shadows. Now, she was the heart of this realm, the source of its power. Commander Vance, the Queen's voice echoed through the chamber, smooth and hypnotic, each word laced with an impossible depth. You have passed the trials one by one. You've proven your strength, your resilience, your will. But now you face the ultimate test. Not of your body or your mind, but of your heart. Your heart. And your soul. Vance's eyes narrowed, his breath steady. He had expected this moment, but now that it was here, he wasn't sure he was ready. The Queen had toyed with him, pushed him to his limits, tested every part of him. But what did she mean by heart and soul? What could she possibly want from him now? You fought for survival, for duty, for your people, Queen Saraxa continued, her voice like silk. But what of your true desires, Commander? What of your deepest wish? What will you sacrifice to achieve it? Vance felt a stirring in his chest, the unsettling question hanging in the air like a challenge. What did he want, truly? He had spent years driven by duty, by responsibility, by the need to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. But was that all there was to him? Was he just a soldier, a tool for the greater good? Did he have any desires of his own, anything beyond the endless cycle of war and survival? The Queen's eyes glimmered, sensing the conflict in his mind. You don't know, do you? You think you have control, but I can see it. Your soul is a labyrinth of choices made for others, a life spent doing what was expected, never questioning. But now, in this moment, you must ask yourself, what are you willing to sacrifice for the one thing you truly want? Before Vance could respond, the air around him shifted. The stars above him began to twist and warp, the universe itself bending and folding like a page in a book. The ground beneath his feet rippled, and suddenly, he was no longer standing in the throne room. He found himself in a completely different place, one that felt disturbingly familiar. He was standing in the midst of a burning city. The buildings were crumbling, the sky choked with smoke. The sound of distant explosions filled the air, along with the cries of desperate people. The faces of the fallen flashed before him, people he had known, people he had sworn to protect. His shipmates, civilians caught in the crossfire. His people, scattered and dying in the wake of war. And in the center of it all, he saw the one person who had always been his anchor, the one person who had stood by him no matter what, his younger sister, Lila. Her face was streaked with dirt and blood, her body trembling as she tried to shield herself from the violence that raged around her. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with terror and confusion. "Elias," she cried, her voice filled with desperation. "Save me. You promised you'd protect me. You promised." Vance's heart clenched as the world around him spun into chaos. His sister, his only remaining family, was here, trapped in this nightmare. And there, at the heart of the destruction, was the one thing he had always feared, his failure. He took a step toward her, but the ground cracked beneath him, and the city seemed to collapse, the flames rising higher, consuming everything in their path. His sister's cries echoed in his ears as he reached out, but he couldn't reach her. No matter how fast he ran, she was always just out of his grasp. He could feel the weight of his failure pressing down on him, dragging him into the depths of guilt and regret. "You see, Commander," the Queen's voice whispered in his ear, colder now, like a serpent's hiss. "This is your heart. This is the cost of your choices, the consequences of your failure. You can never protect them all. You can never save everyone. You are a soldier, and soldiers live with blood on their hands. No?" Vance shouted, his voice hoarse with emotion. He fell to his knees, his hands pressed to the ground, trying to block out the images, the voices, the guilt. "I can't fail her again." "I won't," the Queen's laugh echoed through the chaos, a cruel and haunting sound. "But you already have. You can't save them all. And now you must choose, what will you sacrifice, Commander?" What are you willing to lose to save the one thing you desire? Vance felt the pressure of the choice weigh down on him like a stone in his chest. His sister, or the greater good? His own humanity, or the ideals he had fought so hard to protect? But then, something inside him snapped. He couldn't choose. He wouldn't. His heart didn't belong to just one person or one cause. It belonged to the people he loved, the ones he had fought for, and to himself. He would not let the Queen manipulate him into believing that he had to sacrifice one for the other. His duty was to protect, to fight for a future where people like Leela could live without fear. "No," he said again, this time with conviction. "I won't choose between them. I will fight for them all." The world around him seemed to freeze, the flames dying down, the destruction halting. The city vanished, and the void of stars returned. Queen Syraxa's form shimmered before him, her expression unreadable. "So be it, Commander. You have passed the final trial. You have chosen not just duty, but humanity." Vance stood tall, his heart steady, the weight of the trial finally lifting. "I choose them all. I choose to protect." The Queen's eyes glowed with an unsettling intensity. "You may have passed this trial, Commander, but you have yet to see what comes next. The heart is only the beginning." As the last words of the Queen echoed in the air, Vance knew one thing with certainty: the real challenge had just begun. The universe had gone still. For a moment, Commander Elias Vance felt as though time itself had come to an end, frozen in the void that surrounded him. The weight of the trials he had faced was pressing on him, his mind weary, his body aching from the unrelenting tests of endurance, intellect, and spirit. He had confronted his deepest fears, sacrificed his self-doubt, and fought through the very core of what made him human. He had done everything that was asked of him, and yet the Queen's voice lingered in the air, thick with expectation. "You have passed the trials, Commander." Queen Syraxa's voice rang out once more, calm but filled with an unmistakable tension. "But this is not the end. The true test is only just beginning. The final trial awaits you. You will not face an enemy or challenge of strength or mind this time. You will face the most important choice of your life." Vance's breath caught in his chest. "What are you talking about?" The Queen's form shimmered before him, her radiant presence now surrounded by the starlit void, the vastness of space making her appear both mighty and distant. Her eyes glowed with a knowing intensity, her power undiminished by the challenges he had faced. There was no mercy in her gaze, only the cold clarity of inevitability. "You have proven yourself worthy, Commander. But the universe is a vast, unpredictable place. Power, wisdom, and strength are fleeting. Choices, however, are eternal. This final trial is not for me, not for you. It is for the very future of your species." Vance's heart tightened. His mind raced, but his voice remained steady. "What are you asking of me, Queen Syraxa?" The Queen extended her wings, and with a graceful movement, the universe around them shifted. The stars dimmed, and the familiar starry expanse collapsed into a scene he recognized all too well: Earth, his home. His eyes swept across the familiar continents, and though it looked the same as it always had, there was something different about it. The landscape was untouched, pristine but lifeless. No cities, no people. It was a beautiful, haunting version of Earth, devoid of the hum of civilization. "This is your world," the Queen's voice echoed as the image of Earth before them shifted again. This time, the planet was teeming with life, bustling with civilization. Vance could see the cities of his homeland, the streets filled with people, the life he had fought for, the life he had sacrificed so much to protect. But this world is fragile. "There is a storm coming, Commander Vance. A storm far more dangerous than anything you have faced. The stars themselves tremble at its approach. You cannot stop it with weapons, with strength, or with strategy. There is no army large enough, no force powerful enough to prevent it. The universe is shifting, and your world is caught in its path. You have only one choice." The image of Earth flickered again, this time showing something different: alien forces, vast fleets descending upon the planet, intent on destruction. He recognized the ships, the same ones that had destroyed so much of the galaxy in their wake. It was the very same fate he had witnessed in countless worlds before. His heart sank as the fate of Earth seemed inevitable. "You see the storm?" the Queen continued, her voice barely a whisper in the stillness of space. "This is the threat that looms over your people. You cannot stop it by force alone. No, Commander, you must decide whether to join the stars or protect what remains of humanity." The air around him shifted again, and suddenly, Vance was no longer standing alone in the void. He stood in the midst of a crowd, his fellow soldiers, his allies, the survivors of his fleet, the civilians who had clung to hope through years of war. Their faces were tired, their bodies worn. They looked to him for guidance, for leadership, for salvation. And then, the Queen's voice broke through the haze of confusion and pain. "This is the choice before you. Join the Intergalactic Alliance I offer, Commander. Join us in our effort to reshape the galaxy, to bring peace at any cost, even if it means the end of humanity as you know it. Your people will be saved, protected by forces beyond comprehension. The galaxy will bend to your will, and you will have everything you have ever wanted. Earth will thrive, but only if you let go of what makes it human. Let go of its sovereignty, its autonomy." The image of Earth flickered again, but this time, it was not the civilization he had seen before. It was broken, scarred, isolated. His people were fighting alone, relying on their will to survive, holding on to their independence. The choice was clear: bow to the might of the stars and join their cosmic reign, or continue the fight for humanity's survival, knowing the cost would be unimaginable. Vance's hands clenched into fists, his mind racing. "You want me to give up everything my people have fought for? Everything they've believed in? To sacrifice what makes us human?" The Queen's eyes narrowed, the light around her darkening. "I offer you a choice, Commander. A choice between salvation and sacrifice. Choose wisely. There is no turning back." Vance's gaze hardened, his chest tightening with the weight of the decision that lay before him. He thought of his crew, his comrades. He thought of his sister, Leela, and the people who had trusted him, depended on him. He thought of the endless years of war, the sacrifices, the lives lost. But most of all, he thought of humanity, of their resilience, their defiance in the face of adversity, their unwillingness to bow down to tyranny. The Earth he saw in the vision wasn't perfect. It wasn't without flaws, but it was their home. It was his home, and it was worth fighting for. The stars above them flickered and dimmed, the weight of the decision pressing down on his shoulders. There was only one answer, one path forward. The choice was never about saving his own life, nor was it about taking the easier road. It was about the future of humanity. "No," Vance said, his voice calm but resolute. "I will not surrender. Not to you. Not to anyone. Humanity will find its own path forward. We will fight, we will survive, and we will never give it."